What would you do if the secret of your pregnancy was revealed in the worst way possible? It was supposed to be a perfect night. I had prepared Ethan's favorite dinner, hoping to finally win his mother's approval after weeks of tension. But everything shattered in an instant. When my mother-in-law leaned in and whispered something to Ethan, I watched his face shift from calm to furious. Then, before he even understood what was happening, before I could say a single word, he slapped me. His pregnant wife. The shock hit me first, then the sting, then the overwhelming nausea. Tears blurred my vision as I stumbled back. Could I ever trust him again? Could I forgive him? More importantly, could I stay with someone who had just hurt me and our baby? I still hear the sound of my mother-in-law's heels clicking against the hardwood floor as she walked toward Ethan. The rich aroma of the lasagna I had spent hours preparing filled the air, a meal I had made as part of my plan to share the happiest news of our lives. My stomach was in knots, but not just from nerves. Morning sickness had hit me hard at 6 weeks. I hadn't told anyone yet. And then everything changed. Vivian, my mother-in-law, rested a hand on Ethan's shoulder and whispered something in his ear. I watched as his warm brown eyes turned ice cold in a matter of seconds. "Is this true?" he demanded, his voice sharp with accusation. He stood so abruptly that his chair scraped loudly against the floor. "Have you been lying to me?" Before I could respond, his hand struck out. The slap was so sudden and so forceful that I lost my balance and stumbled into the wall. My cheek burned, my world spun, and hot tears welled in my eyes. Then the nausea I had been fighting all evening overwhelmed me. I turned away and threw up right in front of both of them. Ethan took a step back, disgust flickering across his face, until something on the floor caught his attention. My purse had fallen open. A pregnancy test had slipped out. His face drained of color as he looked from the test to me. "Grace, are you?" His voice cracked. I touched my stinging cheek, tears spilling down my face. "Yes," I whispered. "I was going to tell you tonight. That's why I made your favorite dinner." Silence filled the room like a heavy fog. Ethan stared at the pregnancy test, then at his own hand, the hand he had just used to strike his pregnant wife. Vivian stood frozen, her lips pressed into a thin, colorless line. But even she couldn't hide the shock in her eyes. "Oh my God," Ethan muttered, his voice trembling. "Grace, I. He reached for me, but I flinched, my body instinctively retreating. The man who had promised to love and protect me had just hurt me while I carried his child. In that moment, as Ethan wrestled with the horror of what he had done, I realized something. Our lives would never be the same. The secret I had planned to share with Joy had been revealed in the worst way imaginable. And now I had to decide. Could I ever trust him again? Could I ever forgive him? Could I stay with someone who had proven he was capable of hurting me and our baby? A creaking sound made us all turn. The front door had been pushed open. Chloe, our next-door neighbor, stood in the doorway, concern etched across her face. "I heard shouting," she said, taking in the scene. My tear-streaked face, Ethan's guilty expression, Vivian's tense posture. "Is everything okay?" Nothing was okay. And deep down, I knew nothing would be okay for a long time. I remember the day I met Ethan like it was yesterday. A Friday afternoon at Carter's coffee shop in downtown Austin. I had been grading papers. Being a third-grade teacher meant my weekends started with stacks of math worksheets and creative writing assignments. Ethan accidentally spilled his coffee on my students' homework. His frantic attempts to salvage the papers made me laugh. "I swear I'm not usually this clumsy," he said, desperately dabbing at the ruined sheets. "Please let me make it up to you. Maybe dinner." That's how it started. Simple, sweet, perfect. Ethan was everything I had dreamed of. Successful but humble, funny yet responsible. And he looked at me like I was the most fascinating person he'd ever met. Our first year of marriage was beautiful. We bought a small house with a backyard, talked about having kids someday, and spent weekends making plans for our future. Then Vivian moved in. "It's just temporary, honey," Ethan assured me. "Mom's having a hard time with the divorce." She needs support right now. I wanted to be understanding. I really did. But Vivian had a way of making me feel small in my own home. Nothing I did was ever good enough. The house wasn't clean enough. My cooking didn't meet her standards. And apparently I wasn't taking good enough care of her precious son. Ethan works so hard, she'd say, watching me pack his lunch. He needs more protein than that. When I was taking care of him. At first, the changes in Ethan were subtle. He started criticizing things he had never cared about before. The way I folded his shirts, how I seasoned his food, how much time I spent talking to my sister. And each new criticism came after his mother's whispered conversations. When I found out I was pregnant 3 weeks ago, I should have been overjoyed. Instead, I felt terrified. I hid the morning sickness, making excuses to rush to the bathroom at school. I kept crackers in my desk drawer, blaming my exhaustion on end-of-semester stress. I wanted to tell Ethan first, to have just one moment of joy between us before Vivian could take over with her opinions on how I should handle my pregnancy. The night of the slap, I had finally built up the courage. I planned everything. His favorite lasagna, his preferred wine, which I wouldn't be drinking, and a tiny onesie to surprise him with. Then Vivian invited herself to dinner. "Family dinners are important," she said, seating herself at the table. I was in the kitchen layering the pasta when I overheard her on the phone. "She's hiding something, I know it. I've seen her running to the bathroom at odd hours. Probably having an affair. My Ethan deserves better than that." My hand shook. And that was the moment I knew. No matter what happened next, no matter what I decided, nothing in my life would ever be the same again. I placed the lasagna in the oven. An affair. Is that what she had whispered to Ethan at dinner? Was that why he was so quick to believe the worst about me? Now, standing in our dining room with Chloe witnessing the aftermath of everything that had just happened, I felt the weight of every wrong assumption, every whispered lie, every moment I had stayed silent just to keep the peace. My hand instinctively moved to my stomach. The baby inside me deserved better than this. I deserved better than this. "Grace." Ethan stepped toward me, his voice breaking. "Please let me explain." But before I could respond, Chloe wrapped her arm around my shoulders. "She's coming with me," she said firmly. "And you better not try to stop her." As Chloe led me toward the door, Vivian's voice rang out behind us. "Ethan, darling, she's hysterical. You know how women get in her condition." The door slammed shut, muffling her words. But the damage had already been done. In a single evening, my perfect life had shattered. And I had no idea how to pick up the pieces. The next few days at Chloe's house blurred together. Tears, nausea, and endless calls from Ethan that I ignored. Chloe, bless her heart, took care of everything. She went back to my house to grab my clothes, called the school to request my sick days, and even held my hair back while I battled morning sickness. "Your house isn't a home anymore, Grace," she said one morning, pushing a cup of ginger tea across the table. "I've watched things get worse for months. We all have." I wrapped my hands around the warm mug, staring down at the swirling liquid. "Vivian." It had all started with small things. Rearranging my kitchen under the guise of helping, making comments about my weight in the name of concern. But her influence over Ethan had been the most devastating. "Remember last month?" Chloe asked gently. "When Ethan skipped your sister's wedding because Vivian claimed she was too anxious to be left alone?" I nodded, my chest tightening. He hadn't even questioned it. Just called my sister, made excuses, while Vivian smirked behind his back. The calls and texts from Ethan kept coming. "I'm so sorry. Please come home. I'll make this right. I never meant to hurt you." But mixed in with his messages were Vivian's. "You're tearing this family apart. Ethan is devastated because of your dramatics. A good wife would come home and work things out." 1 week after the incident, I had my first prenatal appointment. Chloe came with me, holding my hand as the doctor confirmed I was 6 weeks along. Then the sound of my baby's heartbeat filled the room, strong, steady. Tears rolled down my cheeks. Tears of joy. Tears of sadness. Because Ethan should have been there. I had always imagined this moment, sharing it with my husband, with love, with excitement. Instead, I was here without him. Do you want me to record it? Chloe whispered. I nodded, unable to speak. That evening, I sat on Chloe's guest bed, staring at my phone. I had promised myself I wouldn't reach out to Ethan, but hearing our baby's heartbeat changed something inside me. With trembling hands, I sent him the recording along with a simple message. Your child's heartbeat. His response came almost instantly. Please, can we talk? In person. Without Mom. I glanced at my reflection in the mirror. The bruise on my cheek had faded into a sickly yellow-green, but the fear in my eyes was still fresh. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Vivian. How dare you send that to him without discussing it with me first? I'm his mother. I should be involved in these decisions. Something inside me snapped. 3 years of silence. 3 years of trying to please her. 3 years of watching my husband slowly become her puppet. I typed the words I had been holding back for far too long. You are not involved in decisions about my baby. Never have been. Never will be. I blocked her number before she could respond. A few moments later, Ethan called. This time I picked up. She made it all up, Grace, he said before I could speak. His voice was raw, broken. I heard her on the phone with her friends, bragging about how she saved me from your supposed affair. She lied. And I believed her. He exhaled shakily. I hit you because I believed her lies. His voice cracked and I could hear him crying. I need you to choose, Ethan, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Either your mother moves out or I'm not coming back. And if I don't come back, I'll be talking to a lawyer about full custody. I won't raise my child in a home with violence. The silence on the other end stretched so long I thought he had hung up. Finally he spoke. Can you meet me tomorrow? His voice was almost a whisper. At Carter's coffee shop. Where we first met. Mom won't be there, I promise. I need to see you. I looked down at my stomach. Still flat but carrying our future. Okay, I whispered. Tomorrow. 2 o'clock. But Ethan, if she shows up, I'm done. Forever. She won't, he said, his voice firm. I'm choosing you, Grace. I should have chosen you all along. As I ended the call, I wasn't sure if I believed him. But for the sake of our baby, I had to try. I arrived at Carter's coffee shop 15 minutes early, my heart pounding in my chest. The familiar scent of coffee beans, once comforting, now made my stomach turn. I chose a table near the door, an easy escape route if things went wrong. Chloe was parked across the street, ready to intervene if needed. At exactly 2 o'clock, the bell above the door chimed. Ethan walked in. Alone. Just as he had promised. He looked terrible. Unshaven, dark circles under his eyes, wearing the same blue button-down from the night of the incident. I tensed as he approached, but he stopped a few feet away, respecting my space. Can I sit? He asked softly. I nodded, watching as he sank into the chair across from me. His eyes flickered to my stomach, then away, guilt written all over his face. I kicked her out, he said without preamble. Last night. She's staying at a hotel. I wrapped my hands around my untouched tea. Just like that. No. He let out a humorless laugh. She screamed, cried, told me I was abandoning her. Said I was choosing a... He swallowed hard. I can't even repeat what she called you. But I packed her bags myself. Told her if she didn't leave, I'd call the police. The couple at the next table glanced our way. I lowered my voice. Why now, Ethan? Why not after all the other times she hurt me? Because I became her. His voice cracked. When I hit you, I became everything I hated about her. Controlling, violent, willing to believe the worst. He wiped his eyes roughly. The sound of your head hitting the wall keeps playing in my mind. And then seeing that pregnancy test. He choked back a sob. The barista called out someone's order, making me jump. Ethan flinched at my reaction. I'm scared of you, I admitted quietly. Do you understand that? I'm carrying your child and I'm scared of you. You should be, he whispered. What I did, there's no excuse. But Grace, please believe me, it will never happen again. I'm starting therapy tomorrow. I already had my first consultation. I need to understand why I let her control me. Why I became this person I don't even recognize. I took a shaky breath. I have conditions, Ethan. Non-negotiable ones. He leaned forward. Anything. And I told him. No discussions, no second chances. If this happens again, I will press charges and fight for full custody. My hands clenched into fists as I made my stance clear. Ethan nodded, pulling out his phone and opening an email. I've already found a couples counselor, he said, sliding a business card across the table. This is my lawyer. I've asked her to prepare legal papers granting you full custody if I ever become violent again. Just one incident, that's all it would take. My fingers trembled as I picked up the card. You're serious about this? He exhaled shakily, eyes downcast. I love you, Grace. I love our baby. And I hate what I did. When I heard that heartbeat, I realized I was becoming the kind of father I never wanted to be. The kind that makes their child afraid. The silence between us was thick with unspoken fears and cautious hope. Finally I spoke. I'm not coming home today. I need time. And we start couples counseling first. Relief flickered across his face. Would it be okay if I came to the next doctor's appointment? For the first time since that awful night, I felt a small spark of hope. Yes, I said, but Chloe comes too. Of course, he agreed without hesitation. Whatever you need to feel safe. As we sat there, afternoon sunlight streaming through the coffee shop window, I realized we were standing at a crossroads. The path forward wouldn't be easy. Trust had to be rebuilt, damage repaired. But at least now there was a path. Boundaries and battles. The following 2 weeks were a delicate dance of setting boundaries and taking tentative steps forward. Ethan attended therapy twice a week, sending me photos from his check-ins to prove his commitment. Dr. Martinez, our couples counselor, guided us through our first sessions, helping us communicate without Vivian's toxic influence. But Vivian wasn't going quietly. Ethan, your mother is outside my classroom again. I texted him one Tuesday morning. Through the window, I saw her sitting in her silver Mercedes, eyes locked on the school entrance. My third graders were at recess, but my hands trembled as I typed. His response was instant. Don't move. I'm calling the police. 15 minutes later, I watched as 2 officers approached her car. At first, she played the part of the concerned mother. Tears, trembling hands, claiming she was just worried about her son's marriage. But when they told her to leave, the mask slipped. She's poisoning my son against me, she shrieked, loud enough for me to hear through the closed window. She trapped him with that baby. Beside me, my classroom aide, Ashley, placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. Want me to record this? She whispered. Might help with that restraining order. I nodded, grateful for her quick thinking. That evening, during counseling, Ethan broke down when I showed him the video. His voice was hollow. I never saw it before, how she really is. She acted just like this when Dad left, screaming, making accusations, playing the victim. Then I always believed her version of everything. Dr. Martinez's voice was gentle but firm. The cycle of abuse is strong, Ethan. But every time you choose Grace and your child over your mother's manipulation, you're breaking it. A future without fear. Later that week, we had another prenatal appointment. Chloe drove me, with Ethan following in his own car, a precaution we had agreed upon for my comfort. During the ultrasound, the technician guided us through the scan. For the first time since that night, Ethan reached out and took my hand. I let him. Would you like to know the gender? The technician asked warmly. Ethan glanced at me, silently seeking permission. I nodded. It's a girl. A rush of emotion hit me as I placed a protective hand over my stomach. When I looked at Ethan, I could see the same thought mirrored in his eyes. Our daughter would never grow up in a home where love was conditional, where manipulation and violence were the norm. As Chloe and I left the clinic that evening, we found Vivian waiting in the parking lot. Before I could react, Ethan stepped in front of me, a physical barrier between us. "Leave," he said, his voice cold and resolute. "Now, or I'm calling the police again." Her voice rose, shrill with hysteria. "I have a right to know about my granddaughter. She must have been eavesdropping." "No, you don't," Ethan replied, his tone like steel. "You lost that right the moment you made me hurt her mother." Vivian's face contorted with fury. "I never made you do anything. She's turning you against me, just like your father." Chloe, ever the protector, held up her phone. "Security is on their way. If you don't leave, they'll call the police immediately." Vivian's eyes burned with rage, but she finally backed away toward her car. "This isn't over," she spat. "That's my grandbaby." As she retreated, Chloe turned to me with a reassuring smile, but my chest still felt unbearably heavy. That night in Chloe's guest room, I finally let myself break down. Ethan sat just outside the door. We weren't ready for him to stay the night yet, but after Vivian's outburst, he refused to leave me alone. "I've filed for a restraining order," he said softly through the door. "For all three of us, you, me, and the baby. My lawyer says with the school video and the clinic incident we should get it." I pressed my hand against the door, sensing his presence on the other side. "I'm sorry," he whispered, voice raw. "For everything. For not protecting you. For choosing her over you." "I know," I murmured. "But Ethan, you need to understand something." "Anything?" I placed my hand on my growing belly. "I'm not doing this for us. I'm doing it for her. She deserves better than what we had." His voice was steady when he answered. "She does. And I swear, Grace, she'll have it. We'll give her everything we never had. Safety, trust, love without conditions." For the first time in weeks, I believed him. Breaking the cycle a week later, the restraining order was granted. 3 months, renewable based on Vivian's behavior. Seeing it in writing made it real. We were taking control. Ethan and I continued separate therapy sessions and met twice a week for couples counseling. Slowly, painfully, we unpacked years of manipulation and control. During one session, Dr. Martinez asked, "Ethan, when did you first notice your mother's influence affecting your behavior?" He rubbed his face, thinking. 2 months after our wedding. Grace made this beautiful birthday dinner for me, but Mom had already taken me out to lunch. She knew about the dinner, Grace had told her. But when I got home, she started making comments about how wasteful it was, how we needed to be more careful with money. Dr. Martinez nodded. "And how did you react?" Ethan turned to me, shame in his eyes. I complained. Told Grace we needed to be more mindful of spending. She had used her own salary, but I still criticized her. I remembered that night all too well. It had been one of the first times I felt like I was fighting a battle I hadn't even known had started. Now, sitting across from him, I realized something. For the first time, Ethan was fighting it too. I had thrown the entire meal away, tears streaming down my face in the kitchen while Ethan and Vivian watched TV in the living room. "Old patterns run deep," Dr. Martinez had explained. "But recognizing them is the first step toward change." By the 5th month, we felt ready for me to move back home. Chloe helped me pack, still hesitant. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, folding my maternity clothes. "No," I admitted. "But I have to try, for her." I rested a hand on my growing belly. The house felt different when I returned. Vivian's presence had been erased. Her decorative plates, passive-aggressive sticky notes, and photos all gone. The walls were freshly painted in soft yellows and greens, colors Ethan and I had chosen for the nursery. "I got rid of the dining room set," Ethan said quietly. "Bought a new one. I didn't want you to have to see that table every day." The new table was round, warm oak, a stark contrast to Vivian's imposing mahogany. There was no hierarchy, no head of the table where she once ruled. Instead, we created new routines. Ethan texted before coming home, giving me time to prepare. We cooked together instead of me handling all the meals alone. Every decision about the baby was made together with no outside interference. The first real test came at 7 months. Vivian sent a baby gift to my school, an expensive silver rattle with a note. Family heirlooms can't be kept away by restraining orders. Ethan took it straight to our lawyer. She's testing boundaries, he said, his jaw tight. Making sure we know she's still watching. The rattle was returned through legal channels, accompanied by a warning about violating the restraining order. That night Ethan held me as I cried. What if she never stops? I whispered. What if our daughter grows up looking over her shoulder? Then we protect her, he said firmly. Every day, every time. I won't fail her like I failed you. Dr. Martinez helped us develop a safety plan. Passwords for daycare pickup, security cameras for the house, and a list of trusted contacts in case of emergencies. As my due date neared, we faced another challenge. Somehow, Vivian had discovered the hospital I'd registered at. We need to switch, Ethan said, showing me a message from his cousin. She's already trying to get information from the maternity ward. So we changed hospitals, registered under Chloe's address, and made sure every staff member knew about the restraining order. It felt extreme, but watching Ethan take these precautions helped rebuild my trust. You're doing the work, Dr. Martinez said in one of our final sessions. Both of you. That's what matters. Looking around our transformed home, at the nursery we had built together, and at the man Ethan was becoming without his mother's influence, I finally felt something I hadn't in months: peace. Labor started at 2 a.m. on a quiet Tuesday. Ethan called Chloe first, then followed our practiced plan. Hospital bag, car seat, security cameras checked. No sign of Vivian's Mercedes near our home. The delivery room was calm, nothing like the chaos I had feared. Ethan stayed by my head, whispering encouragement, while Chloe guarded the door like a sentinel. After 12 hours, our daughter Lily Grace entered the world, her tiny lungs announcing her presence. She's perfect, Ethan whispered, tears streaming down his face. She looks just like you. Holding Lily for the first time, I studied her features. My dark hair, Ethan's nose, 10 perfect fingers and toes. She was everything we had fought for, everything we had protected. The next test came sooner than expected. A flower delivery arrived at the hospital, addressed to my first granddaughter, Lily. Ethan intercepted it before it reached our room. The card read, "Blood is thicker than water. She'll need her grandmother soon enough." Instead of hiding it, Ethan handed it to me. "No more secrets," he said firmly, tearing it up before my eyes. Hospital security increased their rounds. Chloe's partner, Tom, a police officer, volunteered to stand guard outside our door at night. We were surrounded by protection, by people who understood our need for safety. Bringing Lily home wasn't what I had imagined during my pregnancy. Ethan had installed new security cameras, changed the locks, and added extra lighting. But inside it was just us, our little family of 3. "Welcome home, Lily," I whispered as I carried her into the nursery we had lovingly prepared. The room was a sanctuary, painted in soothing colors, filled with books and stuffed animals we had chosen together. The first few weeks blurred into sleepless nights and endless diaper changes. Ethan had taken extended paternity leave, showing his commitment to being present. We were shaping our parenting style, free from Vivian's control, her critical voice no longer dictating our choices. At Lily's 1-month checkup, the pediatrician smiled. "She's thriving. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." That evening, as we sat in the nursery with Lily sleeping peacefully in her crib, Ethan took my hand. "I saw Mom today," he said quietly. "At the grocery store. I was picking up diapers." My heart pounded. "What happened?" She tried to approach me. Asked about Lily. He squeezed my hand. I walked away. Called security. Followed our plan. I exhaled, releasing a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "And how do you feel?" "Sad," he admitted. But certain. Our daughter will never know that kind of love. The kind that manipulates, that controls. She'll only know the real thing. Looking down at Lily sleeping soundly, I knew he was right. The cycle was broken. Our home was filled with a different kind of love now. The kind that protects instead of controls, that builds instead of destroys. Lily stirred, making the tiny noises that melted our hearts. Ethan and I sat there, hands still linked, watching her. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" I asked softly. "For giving me a second chance. For showing me what a real family looks like. For her." I leaned against his shoulder, feeling truly safe for the first time in years. "We did it together," I said. "And we'll keep doing it. Every day. For her." Outside, the sun set on another day in our new life. A life we had fought for, a life we would protect. A life where our daughter would grow up knowing only love, never fear. And that made every struggle, every tear, and every difficult choice worth it. But after everything, can I truly trust Ethan again? Can he really change into the husband I've always hoped for? Or is this a wound that will never fully heal? Logically, this relationship faces a massive challenge. Ethan's actions weren't a one-time mistake but the result of years of influence from his mother. Deeply ingrained patterns don't disappear overnight, no matter how many promises are made. True change takes time, effort, and proof through actions, not just words. The real question is, can Grace embrace a fresh start, knowing that the past can never be erased? Every relationship requires respect and mutual protection. No one can change unless they fully acknowledge their mistakes and take concrete steps to fix them. What do you think about forgiveness? Can real change happen after deep hurt? Or are some wounds impossible to heal? Share your thoughts.